What's going on, Soul Nation? Ginger Prime here. And just as a heads up, this coffee chat does feature some light profanity later on in the video. I hope you enjoy it regardless, and thank you for watching. What's going on, Soul Nation? Ginger Prime here, and today I'm sitting down with none other but Carrick from ACG. We just filmed an epic podcast talking about the state of game reviews. So much. It was just the best conversation, and you should check it out on Ginger Gaming Radio. I'll have that up for you and the link in the description if you're interested. Carrick, welcome to Ginger Prime. Thanks for making time, and we're going to be talking about Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Google, and Amazon, essentially talking about the present state of gaming and how we see the future state of gaming, both as a gamer, a creator, and a developer. I think. Yeah, yes, indeed. So let's start with, obviously, you're the guest, and you've been reviewing games professionally here for 3 years on YouTube, but like 7 years overall with your channel. And you've reviewed just a handful, especially million view videos. We've the review process you deliver, especially, I think, is second to none. I was introduced to you actually through Skill Up on a podcast, and it's good to hear that you guys have a close working relationship. Yeah. And you guys can hear about that again in the plug for the podcast. But what's the state of gaming from your perspective now as a gamer? Like, are you positive on it? Are you negative on it? What do you think?
As a gamer, I got to tell you, if you take it all in, everything in, the offerings, I'm very positive. Very positive on the offerings. We'll talk about the other stuff. Not so positive there. But as a gamer, just a very short aside, even though it sort of has to do with the career part, I cover a lot of free MMOs where you can play for 60 hours before paying, let's say, before, feeling like here's some money that needs to go out. To me, it's never been done, Brian. That's never been done. We used to have demos. That's great, and I want demos. I love demos. Found some of the greatest games, but we've never had these games that I can, if I want, just jump into and play with friends for hours with no money. We have Game Pass. Game Pass is almost scientifically doesn't make sense in how much you get from it. We can talk about that in a bit. It's mind-boggling.
Well, I'm just wondering how Game Pass has impacted your review. Buy, wait for sale, rent, or never talk about.
So rent is what that comes down to, because it's $5 a month, and when you do not pay, then the game goes away. So that sort of fit in, and I can just say, hey, this is a Game Pass game, so we'll consider this your rent version. I can adjust those. A lot of people give me hell for still having rent, but GameFly exists, and so does. And now with these subscription services, I'm like, well, those are rents, because you normally don't keep the game, so it's like I'm okay with that.
You do get to keep your save, like, just as an aside. Like, I remember,
isn't that nice too?
I remember playing Chrono Trigger. Like, you ever been so broke that you just can't like afford anything, and you're like, but it was that we were trying to always make sure we got the same copy of Chrono Trigger so we could continue our save from the Blockbuster, like as kids. Like, it was just like,
I didn't even think about that. You mean like the same exact cartridge, because the battery save, the chip would have your save on there somewhere.
Exactly. So we were trying to, because we had to return it, like we couldn't have it all the time, like obviously because school. But I was just like, I remember that now, at least with the rent, like your save is still is on your hard drive. So it's like, okay, you can,
or in your account, right? If it's an MMO.
Oh, yeah.
And I think from that standpoint, the standpoint of the next gen, this is something that I cover. I cover racing games. You and I talk about this. I have had to go through multiple gens where every system had its own steering wheel, right? Its own joysticks, and Xbox and Sony have both stated very clearly this will not happen with this gen. Be able to use the same stuff from your PS4, Xbox days. So that's another cool positive for somebody personally as a gamer. I'm just talking about me as somebody who loves a Forza game. It's just one more savings.
I think it allows them to actually make a lot more investment into the product. So right now, this isn't actually going to be like us on camera, but I'm holding my Elite Series 2, and it allows them to invest and have a higher quality product that carries forward, because it's like, if it's $200, like, no. Then if you think about that, if that carry forward mentality is like, you could invest $400 or $600 into this, whatever it is, if that's where you want to put your money, and they can make a better product, because you're not going to have to sit here and say goodbye to it in 5 years, 4 years, something of that nature.
Yeah. So as a gamer, I would say, despite issues in the industry, my own personal the stuff I'm seeing, emulation on the PS4 for PS2 games. I turned on Rogue Galaxy, one of my favorite games by Level 5. Then Dark Cloud 2, I was not a PS2 fan when I was a kid, but those are both incredible RPGs. Those are on, and then you got backwards compat on the Xbox, and it's great, man. It's great. Like, it's just so much stuff.
So as we look as a gamer at forward in that regards, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, Stadia, Project Tempo, which is Amazon's cloud streaming, and you have Nintendo off, like just being Nintendo. We have out of all of this, everybody's
puff pass, man. Nintendo's holding on to the bong too long, dude. I don't know what's going on at Nintendo ever.
You never they're just going to show up and do something, and
they will show up and they will usually nail it. So I have given Nintendo this weird pass where if Nintendo says we're doing a handheld again or whatever, I'll just be like, okay, I got you. Okay.
Got it. Cool. All right. Yeah. So anyway, but it's so hard to talk about Nintendo from a future perspective because one of the strengths that they bring to gaming is that when you look at big companies like EA and Activision, two of the leading bad guys, generally
yes,
it's like you say them and you got the hiss, it's like, but outside of them, it's like Nintendo will try things, and not because they think that's going to bring in crazy profit, but it's the things that succeed that then percolate through the industry. EA, who will never try anything risky, Activision, who won't. Those are publicly, even though Nintendo's publicly traded, these companies are like, no, why take the risk? We're going to keep doing what people pay for. It's simple math. While Nintendo, that's why I think Nintendo is important, because they push the envelope and they discover things that work, and sometimes they discover things that don't work, and then you're like, well, that didn't work. But outside of Nintendo, when you look at, we'll just focus in on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X because cloud gaming is a topic in and of itself for now. What's your read on that as a gamer?
On them as going for apart.
So obviously you've got quotes, examples Phil Spencer's talking about how he doesn't feel like Sony and Nintendo are his competition in that regards.
Oh, right.
Then you have PlayStation taking kind of an opposite approach. It is interesting from my perspective as an engineer, just like somebody who's passionate about the industry. It's these are two different ideas. It's not here's the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. They have power levels and price levels, and games are all similar, and you just decide which ecosystem you want to be in. They're taking two hard lines, philosophical almost in a way, where Sony's we believe in generations. We're going to make PS5 games, and they're not going to be playable on PS4. Where Microsoft's saying, no, we believe in this fluidity, it's forward, it's backwards, just play wherever. Hell, we don't even want to sell you a console. Just go play on the PC, go for it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. Do you have any read on that whole situation?
Yeah, I think they're both complete liars. So I've had to deal with Sony telling me to get a second job to buy the PS3. I was at that E3.
Yeah.
Right? They're full of shit. Microsoft full of shit. So or full of crap. I apologize.
That's fine.
I already screwed this one up. When you look at these companies, I believe, first of all, we've already had Microsoft sort of wheel back and say what we meant was the first year, all of them will be backwards and forwards. And after that, it'll be sort of open. Sony has changed their idea 55 times and that we don't believe in this. Now, remembering that Jim Ryan is the guy who said backwards compatibility completely made sense and isn't a thing. And now they're talking a little bit about backwards compatibility as well. What they're trying to do is simply give themselves a verbal gap in your brain. This is what I did was PR. This is what I did. So I do know that if somebody's offering you pretty much the identical thing, you're looking for that, shoot the gap. You're trying to find that little spot. And so what happens is Microsoft says something, Sony says slightly different stuff. This all began also 2 generations ago, but you saw its biggest impact last gen with the E3, where Sony found out what Microsoft was going to say and did their little presentation that looked like a 3-year-old made it. That was Xbox said, you don't own your games, or whatever they said about the Xbox One, and Sony's like, you can just take your disc out and give it to somebody else, which has happened for both systems. But what happened was Sony was smart. They listened to what the competitor said, and they said something different, but we got the overall general same thing. I think that within 1 or 2 years, the ecosystems will look dramatically the same, except Microsoft does have something Sony does not, which I think is quite interesting. Microsoft has already stated there will be a payment plan for consoles. So, in our current unfortunate status in the world with people having job issues and money being the issue that it is now, I do believe that Microsoft has the financial ability to say, we are your value purchase. Backwards compatibility is there, Game Pass is there, and you do not need to spend 500 day one for the more powerful, at least when you consider teraflop's situation. I do believe that is a pretty perfect storm right now.
That blending of the years too. Just think about it from like a financial, like you just got laid off, and $500 might not be, and who knows what the price is. No one's announced anything, but let's just assume.
We'll assume 500.
Yeah, it's a fair assumption. If they come in lower, huzzah. If they come in higher, well, what are you gonna do? But it also is that sense that imagine sitting here and looking forward to Halo Infinity or looking forward to whatever game and being like, oh man, I'm going to spend $1,000 because you're going to get your system. You're going to get your controllers. You're going to, it's going to be this release for you. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know how I can't do that. But then all of a sudden you're saying, oh, but I already have an Xbox. Oh, I already have Game Pass. Right. Oh, I can play that game. I'm not left out of the cold. I'm not left, it's like, I think you're right. I think they have the strongest value offering that we know of. We don't know what Sony's planning, but we'll find out.
They could offer, I don't think they have the money to swing a purchase plan, but they certainly could, swing some amazing deals. I think also the exclusive, one of the problems people don't understand until you get into software development is, so let's say Microsoft has, you said this in our prior podcast, Microsoft's been buying everybody, right?
Yeah.
Microsoft's just
been
Google. Footing that bill.
And Google. Yeah.
But one thing people forget is that IPs take, we'll say, an average of 3 years. So that means you will not get the exclusives from Sony from any company that released within the last 3 years. So whenever you have the exclusive discussion, what I always tell people is, if there are 4 amazing exclusives a year, but every single day has 365 days out of it, that means for 361 of those days, you're playing something else. And of course, that's reductive. You would play them for longer, 40 hours, whatever. But the drift is that you won't see those Prime IPs from any company that's released recent that has a small team. It'll take a while. Microsoft's going to take a while for, let's say, your Hellblade 2. That'd be a good example of a title that'll take a while. There's some rumors of Fable 4. Not rumors, Fable 4. But we don't know when that'll come. So what we are dropping to is the situation, Brian, where I think a lot of people are going to sit back and do this too. Now, this is a real thing. I don't know if this is for you, but I'm just going to say I hear a lot of people say this. I don't want to put 2 HDMI cables into my TV. It sounds so dumb, but the idea of somebody having one system that plays their old games and their current day one games is actually a bigger deal. So big that Microsoft, if you'll remember, had an HDMI input on their own system.
I use that. Actually, I run the Switch through the Xbox.
So do I. So the Switch, that's exactly what I run through it, because it also upscales, by the way. It does hardware upscaling. So yeah, it's super interesting, man. And we're looking at a time where I personally believe that a lot of third-party companies want to release on everything, including Google as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It wouldn't make sense. Like if
exactly,
with a multiplayer game, with the concept of Stadia. Like I have great internet. It works great. I've been playing games in the cloud since 2019 in June through a product called Shadow PC, and it works fantastic. Right. It's like, okay, great. Like, and from a content creator's perspective, everything that I can get off my hard drive is awesome, because it's like I'm not blessed with like teraflops of data local
data space.
Data space. So it's like I have to be very like, okay, what do I really care about? And I have to. Right. It's been helpful as a content creator to sit back and say, I don't really need to talk about that. It's
exactly.
All right, like that's something I'm just gonna play with my kids and call it a day. It's like, just, I'm not going to have to capture. I'm not going to worry about putting out content for it. And then I'm just going to move on, because it's fine. Like, I'm going to let that one go, and usually it's a thing of like, I've got like right now 40 gigs left, and that's going to go up that's going to be gone by the end of this week. And I have to figure out what I'm going to do with some of this B-roll, or I have to go buy a new hard drive. And so, but cloud gaming is a strength, and to not be on Google, and people are like, oh, they're just going to go away. It's like they spent easily $2.5-3 billion on Stadia. It's like, I've got numbers, and I've got people who've confirmed that for me. And then it's like Amazon's investing in that, and Microsoft's investing in that heavily, and it's not going to be something like maybe in the next 5 years, but by the time the quote unquote next, the, PS5 generation comes out, I'd be surprised if there isn't a PS, 6 or whatever, in the cloud, as an option, because all of a sudden, like when you're in Microsoft's position, let's say you're losing money on every console, and you can sit here and say like, well, if you got the internet, like we don't need to lose money on the selling you the console, because you can just stream it. It's like, and as internet bandwidth hopefully improves across the country, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the long run. Now, as a creator, somebody who reviews games, who makes content, who podcasts and Twitch streams their podcast, what's your take on the state of gaming? And this kind of maybe teases a little bit more of what we talked about in our podcast, like with the drama that's usually surrounded with game reviews and game releases, and companies supporting a game that you like, but the company is perceived evil.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's real. Like somebody's like,
yeah,
has told me, how dare you be excited about Diablo? And I go, all Diablo 4 needs to be is an incredible game, and no one will care. Like it just, and it's so heartless. I feel so heartless saying that, but it's just backed up by all the data, all the drama surrounding Modern Warfare, best-selling game of the entire franchise.
Right.
All the drama about Pokemon, like Pokemon. That when that happened last year, I was like, well, I had my son was born, and I come back and I see everybody just complaining about Pokemon, and I was like, what is this, the Twilight Zone? Like, what world did I just step into? And obviously, like, I'm not trying to say that their complaints aren't warranted. Like the Dexit there, like that is, oh my gosh, like everybody in the world has a favorite Pokemon, and if you didn't make the cut, like that is frustrating, especially when you're like, this is supposed to be the next thing. So I get the emotion behind it, but it was so weird because I was busy with the family, so I was completely disconnected, and I turn on the internet and I'm like, all right, what am I excited about today? And it's like, is the world on fire?
Right.
What happened here? So like, what your perspective though, because that's my perspective. What do you think as a creator regarding?
I mean, I would say it's in the same. I would say it's overall in the same ballpark. I think the biggest issue, or the thing that I've seen, not only since I've started gaming, in the 90s, 80s, but also just as I've been doing reviews and stuff like that, is that there is a forgetting that there is a core of people that don't ever impact the internet or complain about, let's say, a Pokédex for two reasons. One, this is their first Pokemon game.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have any clue what you're even talking about.
My daughter thinks this Pokemon game is awesome. The greatest game of all time.
Right. And two, they're playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not on the internet. And that's one of the actual big jokes that comes up with a lot of my friends is like, I'll be like, man, this guy was complaining. And I'll be like, what do you think? And they're like, I think I wasn't there. So I don't have any clue about what you're like. I wasn't there. The world's so large now with so many different avenues for negative and positive discussion and so forth, that I think a lot of people forget that there's a large contingent that are also disconnected. You disconnected because of a child. Mm-hmm. And a birth, but I deal with a large number. I teach martial arts, and I deal with a large youths that are, let's say, in the 21 to 17 area, and many of them are on the internet on TikTok, right? Mm-hmm. They're on the internet on Snapchat, but they aren't. They're buying microtransactions in mobile games.
Yeah,
dude, one of my friends, no lie, I'm like, how much did you spend? And it was less than 60, okay, which mm-hmm. actually makes, I spent 60 to buy it, to review it. Yeah. So I get the 60 but he was doing something that if I had said in a different group, people would be all over him. In his friend group, it was a budget mm-hmm. that he had for the game.
Yeah.
And he enjoyed himself. And I sat back and I was like, I can sit here and say, in my day, like an old guy, right, on a hill. But instead I was like, you know what, man? Let me tell you what it was like, and what do you think? And when I explained it to him, he's all, and this is no lie. He said, but I'm playing on my cell phone, dude. Yeah. You had to buy a cartridge or rent from Blockbuster. Like, everything's changed. The entire way I'm playing this game is legitimately has nothing connected to the way you or what you thought was awesome. Mm-hmm. It is not connected. He's like, the game you're talking about, I emulate on my cell phone for $3. Mm-hmm. The entire game. And I can transmit it wirelessly to my TV. Mm-hmm. Everything I have is better than you.
Yeah.
Why are you bitching?
I don't get the microtransaction negativity though, because if we want to go back in my day, like I remember back in my day, they used to microtransaction me for lives.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
microtransactions
Quarters.
have been in gaming since
Yeah.
its inception. And there was just a period of time where it went away because there wasn't a method for making that transaction. It was
right, and then it's because they did go to consoles from home arcade.
Well, consoles actually became cheap enough to actually put in your home because, like, if you wanted a really good game experience, you'd go to the arcade and you'd pay 25 cents or 50 cents, or like in some arcades, like I remember seeing like $1, and I was like, that's ridiculous. I mean, as a kid, I didn't have
Dragon's Lair is one of my favorite games, and it was $1 every play.
And you're like, huh, so it's that. It is this weird, like, so it's like people. My whole philosophy behind the microtransaction is I'm a healthy adult, and I have a relationship and I have a responsibility. It's like you can't talk about it without bringing in the concept of responsibility from the buyer. However, if I was an alcoholic and I kept having to go out to the store, or I had to go out and do something, there are many ways that people can say, "Hey, Brian, are you doing okay? What's going on here?" Nobody sees my purchases. No one, I am the only person who has to deal with that.
There's no checks and balances.
There's not really a check and balance system. Yeah. So when you take it outside the concept of what I would say a healthy mindset, you have gambling addiction. You've got varying other, like a child. Like one of my things that I spend on time on YouTube is like, hey, parents, here's how you don't connect your credit card to this. Like, if you want to spend money on it, that's fine. Here's how you can set like almost an allowance that if you want your kids to be able to purchase these little things. That's fine. Like, it's your money. I'm not here to tell you how to spend it. However, I'm here to tell you how to protect it. Because, like you might just, because there's horror stories of people like, how did I spend $17,000 on this? Like, well, if you're a billionaire, who cares if you spend $17,000 on it? If you enjoyed yourself, go nuts.
Well, that's the thing, Brian, is there is a huge disparity in how much money somebody has. And how it becomes unhealthy or isn't unhealthy at particular times. I think there's that. I personally don't like microtransactions in a lot of instances. One of the things I don't like, for instance, and this is more of a moral stupid standpoint, and it would definitely get into the review. It would have to be egregious, and then I would start bringing it down. But I remember I was a virtual fighter on the PS2, or it was PS2, I think. And you could still get online, though, if I remember right. Maybe this was PS3, but I was playing a virtual fighter, and I bought a suit, and nothing downloaded other than 5 kilobytes. Now, I'm smart enough to know that a suit texture is more than 5 kilobytes. And I was like, fuck, it was on the disc.
It's already on the disc.
And that kind of stuff, though, that frustrates me. Or I went in to review NBA 2K19, I believe.
Oh, that was
they
egregious.
Charged me to change my beard to my hair color. They wanted a different transaction for the color for both. And I was like, are you so but that level of egregiousness is different for me than a Saudi prince. Because that dude's got one foot on each yacht, right? So to him, he's like, well, I don't care. Yeah, so all I can do is inform people. I personally don't like them in some instances. However, I absolutely have no issue with them in, let's say, a free-to-play MMO, where I just got 40 hours of gameplay with no money spent. I can tell you, I morally feel the reverse obligation at that point to give them money.
Yeah, and that's where I think
I've been like, here's $5.
Thank you. It becomes a thank you, because if you really like the game,
patron in a way.
Exactly, and if you really like the game, I think gamers show that support. Because
you want it to stick around.
Everybody realizes that, like, this man, guys, I poured 10,000 hours into this game. We're all playing it. And then they shut it down. This is ridiculous. Well, how much money did they make? Oh, they lost trillions of dollars. Well, nobody spent any money on this amazing experience. Like, no. Like, it doesn't. Yeah. There is absolutely that level, and I think it boils down to a level of trust. I think it boils down to the trust in the developer and the publisher with your relationship. Like, is this an egregious expense? Is this ridiculous? Should this be included as a part of the base experience? And I think that's something that the market
Sorry, I had to yell at my dog.
Oh, you're fine. And the market has to figure out. And that's where not engaging with it, like how much time did it take for them to develop that system and how much cost was in place? And all of a sudden everybody's like, no. So we do have that power, and I think that comes down to the job of the reviewer or just the general consensus, not to meet people with like hate, because I see sometimes it's like, how dare you? It's like, no. Invite people into a way of saying, like this, don't engage in this, because this isn't healthy for gaming in the long term.
It's a free market economy as well.
Exactly.
Like you just said, where you all decide, is this shirt worth it? right?
Mhm.
Like, is this, and I'm going to pay the texture artist, you can bet your ass, because I want the texture artist. So another thing people don't realize is usually within 3 months of a game releasing, more than 30% of all developers are laid off
Mhm.
of any big title.
Yeah.
First of all, that's just, it makes no sense. And the reason why that's done is because at that time DLC didn't exist. It was big title. Then you go to your decision on what you're making, your storybook, all your like little crap that and then you build your group back up.
Mhm.
So my belief is if a company is out there or offering some cool stuff, that's great. And it's a free market. You should be able to do it. But like you said, then you look at a title and you're all, and something happens. And it doesn't take, I'm not easily influenced. So like if a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer, even somebody I love, if they were like, this is, for example, Angry Joe and I've disagreed multiple times, and I've talked to him on Twitter behind the scenes and but I get where he's coming. Like, he's mad about something, or maybe he's not, and he's pretending, because that is sort of his thing.
You have a brand with angry in the word. Like you have your angry centaur.
And I made that because that's a D&D name, because I didn't think I was going to be reviewed. It was made well before the YouTube. So, but you get this angry, and I started seeing it, and I'm like, oh, I agree, but I'm not influenced. There's an adult responsibility to not only to make decisions, but to also not be so easily influenced. And I tell people the same thing when I review. I'll be like, dude, this is just me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it really is just me. I mean, at some point, I can only tell you what I felt was worth your money. And then you have to say, what is my money? What does it mean to me? What's this price? Canada, by the way, poor saps, paying $20 extra per game. Australia, I was talking to Skill Up.
Oh, dude, I feel bad for Australians.
Yeah,
not just prices, but also like in censorship and like things that they're not able to get a hold of.
And their internet. We did a podcast. I'm pretty sure I saw 3 frames of Skill Up's face. Like, now he's got it improved now, but when we first, his internet was terrible.
It does not surprise me that how like negative he is on like Stadia and cloud gaming, because it's like it just is like
it's not in the ecosystem.
It's just not you're not even ready. It's
Lone Vault Wanderer. He's the Bethesda community manager. He was on Maddie's podcast when I started, and he was telling me, and I was like, it can't be that bad, and it was way worse than I thought it could be. Like, their internet is legitimately not internet. It's pigeons. Have you transferring data? Have
you noticed a fun trend like on Twitter? Twitter is it's a weird bird, I guess is the best way to say. Like, I don't think it has anything to do with reality.
It absolutely does not have anything to do with reality.
And it's interesting because I see, okay, so obviously being interested in gaming, and as we talk about the next generation, I see a lot of Sony ponies and Xbots just like going for the jugular.
Yeah.
On each other.
Yeah.
And from a high level view, there's an entertainment factor, but at the same time, I am legitimately concerned. And I wonder from my perspective, like, is there something I can do in content creation, in a delivery, in a tone of voice to be like, if you're really a gamer, you don't give a shit if it's Sony or it's Microsoft. That's just my take on it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think there's 3 things you can do, and these are, I talked about this in the other podcast, but these were rules I made when I started the channel. The first was to make sure that the technical information, regardless of the popular zeitgeist, would be the technical information.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was better on the Xbox for whatever reason, I would just be like, dude, this performs. It just is for the and you try to explain reasons. Number 2, you can only help those who really are looking to help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see people say, I've got all the systems, but blah, blah, blah is much better than blah, blah. And you'll be like, dude, you're a complete liar. Like, either you do have all the systems, but you still are a fan of this one, which is also okay.
There's nothing wrong with being a fan or having a preference. I have 3
different monitors, and I like one better than the other. That's life.
Yeah.
It's okay, but don't lie about it. And then the third one is that my firm belief is in reviews, in every podcast I do, in every Y video, you'll almost always hear me try to somehow work in that this is just games. I will almost always try to be like, listen, I've been stabbed. That hurts. Buying a game that sucks doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I had to choose between potatoes and electricity one time because I was poor as dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you, choosing between those, no choice didn't hurt. That's a true choice, not your game not the fact that a game got a 5.1 instead of a 7.1 that you wanted.
It's-
So I try to remind people that it is a big deal. As you said, it's a passion, but man, step the F back, because when something truly bad happens to you, if you think this is bad, you will be destroyed. You will shatter if you think this stuff is
Matters.
like worth dying. Yeah, worth dying on a hill for.
Not because I don't want to sit here because I like to look back at this episode in years and not have to remember the craziness of 2020. But if anything that this year has taught me is what really matters. And games are important. Like for me, games matter and they're important.
Very much so.
But they're not my walls. They're not food for my kids to eat.
Right.
They're not. It's not. Like, hey, okay, we're good. We've got gas. We've got electricity. Okay, now that that's taken care of, okay, what do we do next?
You're just like me, utility first. Since I grew up, my dad was always like,
we were almost homeless. Like,
it's like people don't realize what it's like to. I mean, some do. I want to make sure. Of course, people will. You and I both do, and we're doing better now. But yeah, there are times where
I think it's my better half that helped me. But
I mean, or friends. Mm-hmm. I had a friend step forward when I was making some bad decisions, and they were like, "Dude, seriously, like, and I consider myself fairly healthy on my decisions, but I still make, you still make mistakes, and
you're human,
yeah.
No.
And I think passing those rules or passing those stories on to people, you'll hear me tell a lot of funny stories about the dumb stuff I did as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those stories are still based around like gaming. So I'm always trying to like inform people of like what I thought mattered versus what did. I think those are really the only 2 or 3 things you can. And then the rest of the stuff at some point, bro, you got to put your foot on their head and just move past them and hope they don't have kids. I guess I don't know. Like I
don't know. Sometimes having kids is a quick path to adulthood.
That is true.
Sometimes,
true.
like not that like my family, my sister-in-law, fantastic, amazing person, but she attests to the fact that my nephew is here and she is alive because of him. Just like
gotcha, yeah,
right. And so it's like, yep, just. Okay, time to grow up. It's just like in some people they have that, they get that maternal or the paternal instinct and boom. And it's like, you are completely different. I am completely different around my kids.
They're no longer selfish.
Oh, well, yeah. Like that's the thing me and my wife were laughing about one day. Like when we were married, it's like we realized just how selfish we were. And this is before we had kids. Yeah. And then we laughed even harder because I was like, I know this revelation. It's just going to, we're going to think of like how stupid we are. Thinking that how like, we're like, look how selfish we were and we're working on, it's just like, it is truly like a giving act. Same thing with like, even if you can't have kids, like there's like, you never know who you're impacting. It's not just like actually like a blood thing. You can totally.
Oh, dude, I've had people email me and say like, you made me laugh when I was sick. One of my patrons, he's been a patron for years. He was in the hospital with cancer. And he was like, I didn't have anything to do. Like, I found one of I think you said Sacred Citadel. I'm pretty sure he found that.
Yeah, that was your first review.
Yeah. And he was like, dude, he's like, I had no clue. He's like, 80% of what you said was either big words I didn't know or one-liners that my brain, I would have to go. And he's like, I watched all your Diablo reviews. And he's like, I never laughed so hard when you started describing fighting chickens. He's like, what the fuck was this guy even talking about?
Yeah.
And he's like, and when he said that, it lifted me up for like 2 solid days where I was like, okay, I get it. Like that's awesome where you can impact somebody. Those are very cool.
Yeah. Like I would say like if out of my dad had, I'm the oldest and I have a brother and a sister. He probably had, I would say like 30 kids. Like it's like he was always there. Not fit. Like he didn't have 30 children.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
I'm just saying like, if you were going to sit here and say people who look to him as a father figure, as a mentor, as a guide, like
right.
Always
that guy.
Like our house was filled with kids, like our friends. He basically adopted like his brother-in-law and sister-in-laws because they were like when he married my mom, they were young, and I met my grandfather when my wife did. So not to get all too real, I'm just like,
but I mean, crap happens.
Yeah, life happens, and so anyway, bringing it all back to that, what the point is that like I think when I look at it, it's like I can really see. And really kind of put a value on what matters. And I want to shift kind of in a final piece of this, talking about development. Like what is the future for development from like just Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Google, and Amazon in this case? What do you perceive the developer, you did QA, like how do you perceive them as we go forward into this new generation?
when they got the Xbox One and the PS4, I remember talking to a developer, and he's like, "Do you realize what 8 gigabytes of memory does for what we can do with that?" So I think much ado about nothing with the SSD, because both are super fast. One is just more fast, so that's awesome, but it's not going to cure cancer. It will change the way some games are made. I think what we will see, and this is no lie, guys. I've tested this, and my brain, I can't figure it out. And Brian and I happen to talk about this on the other part of the podcast. But AI, some of the things it's doing, including 2 things in particular: AI anti-aliasing / sharpening filters that we see on NVIDIA, which is going to now be, we know for sure on Xbox, but there's been some shadiness around what PS5 has when it comes to like variable frame rate and stuff on the PS5. They've said nothing about it.
Right.
But the Xbox we know has it. And then AI texture building, which Microsoft just opened up a little bitty like workshop, and one of their heads at Xbox was like, because of bandwidth restrictions in some places, we are looking at the possibility of having texture packs for our games. So a person can say, I want the mid-range texture pack instead of the 4K. And if you downloaded Final Fantasy 15, you know what that means. It means about 100 friggin'
100 gigs, baby.
Yeah. So what I do think is AI will come about in time saving and bandwidth sparing, and we will see those outside of both of the consoles. What I mean is the companies themselves will start doing it. Asset creation. AI is going to be big into asset creation, photogrammetry. I don't know if a lot of people watching this know what that is, but that's like Vanishing of Ethan Carter, the Epic video, where they take pictures of rocks, real real digital pictures, and then they get those digitally into the system, so the texture is a real thing. Yeah. And I think all those mixed together is gonna be awesome. I am worried about one thing though, dude.
What?
I do not believe that the most technically awesome looking games have ever been the best or most eye-catching.
They
Zelda,
haven't.
being one of them, looks fantastic, but it had some FPS issues, but its art style, Sea of Thieves art style, is beyond belief.
Oh, looking at the water, I felt like I was fishing with my dad. Like I was like, this is ridiculous.
It's not even a great game. I didn't like it at all. In fact, when it first came out, it's got a ton of, but its art style won't hinge on these things I just mentioned. And so that is, I'm interested in the dissection of those two alleys. The hyper realistic with the starving artist trying to fight against using AI because he wants to make Sea of Thieves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes real sense.
If you and I are sitting next to each other and you're using AI, I'm like, dude, I want to draw this pirate to look like this or whatever. And you're like, but I can do it in 1 second. That is scary.
What I see when I look at it, I look at kind of also the business model aspect with Microsoft, Sony. Sony just acquired Naughty Dog, or who is
Brian,
that?
I'm going to put him outside.
Okay, go for it. I'll go ahead and talk. So you come on back when you're done. So you got Sony, Microsoft, and that level of investment that these companies have made with building studios, buying top tier talent to run those studios. And I think we're going to see just a continual push for, with investment within that. Meaning, while it won't be immediately felt on day and date, we're going to eventually see over the next years and years and years the product of that. People are building out like what Netflix and Disney Plus are doing, but within games. And that level of investment, I think, is going to be something that really benefits all gamers. Just that the amount of money that these companies are throwing at it, especially when you have Google and Amazon entering the ring. Like, it should not be understated that these trillion-dollar companies have a stake in gaming, and there's going to be some serious money being spent, and hopefully gamers benefit from that investment.
I got a question for you. Yeah. Are you, and we don't have to go there because, dude, I don't want to be negative, but there's a lot of money to be spent in gaming. One way is Tencent. And like, I know so many gamers are against the Epic Store and all that stuff, but some of these games that I know of right now would not have been created if the Epic Store hadn't given them the money to create the actual title. In fact, we have a developer in our Discord where Google's the same way. They paid to be on the Stadia.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, they would. Like, Google's got to they got to pay to play. Like, they don't have any loyalty. Like, to our kind of podcast conversation about how marketing and gaming is so different. Like, no. You got to earn it. Everybody else has been here, so Google better be paying developers to publish on their platform, not the other way around.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, if there's, I just would like there to be a checks and balances for that. Like, not pay. So I'm okay with paid exclusives because a lot of times they're an exclusive because they wouldn't be made.
I would prefer timed exclusives, just to jump in, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. But you have second party companies for Sony, for instance, that just didn't have money. And Sony said, we don't want to buy you, but we want you to make your game on our system. And Epic, I don't know. I guess there's really no discussion to be had. It's business, and business is distasteful to everybody in some aspect of it. Like like when you walk away from it, there's always
like we could relate this to any industry, so there is a discussion to have, because you can say, man, this sucks, but this also wouldn't exist. So like to target, like I had my gallbladder out, and in today's society, like it's a very minor procedure, like if you very small incision. Before they had to do this massive surgery. Through investment, there is now this. And so through investment, things happen, but sometimes it sucks because it's the balance of the business and the art, right? The art would not exist if without the funding. How do you balance that mindset? And it can be, and because art is so powerful in our lives, that's where when that business overreaches. You want it pure, like, yeah. But that's when you feel the business overreach. Like that's where that line becomes egregious. And that's why it's not a set like you can't draw it in the sand and say, don't cross this line, because that line shifts, because depending on the quality of the art and the experience, people can have that line can be different. And so it's like, all of a sudden it's like, well, yes, this game has microtransactions, and yes, you played it for 20 years and you had this incredible journey. Okay, well, that's great. Versus like, okay, well, we're just going to charge you to change your hair color. And you're like, why?
Yeah.
There's nothing else after this. You're just,
because you can't.
Yeah.
It's sort of a no-win situation, but I do get what you mean, where it's like, you just with some of this stuff, I guess it's all free market. You just have to figure out what you're.
Yeah. And that's why I personally hope that we see success with things like Game Pass, PlayStation Now, and these kind of broader subscription services that allow for more creativity and exploration. And the reason I say that is that fundamentally, when we've talked a little bit about MMOs across these two different two videos, we've talked a little bit about these MMOs, and it's fundamentally overall the subscription model per game has been rejected. The subscription model for a collection of games
has been widely accepted. Yeah.
And it's in that value that all of a sudden I could see that actually stabilizing some of these smaller projects, so they don't have to get as like, oh God, like we're going under, make as much money as possible, because these are real people with real jobs and real families. And literally like they like to go to, work and home and play games just like the rest of us, and so that's where like the business, like how does that balance out? And I think, and it could go bad. Like there's no like in 10 years, we'll be looking back here and say, oh, that really worked and that really didn't. It's interesting how the market responded. But I see it as a sign of hope. And I personally hope that like within, like there's subscription saturation. At some point, you can't be subscribed to 1,000 things, because you're just going to be like, there's no way you can consume it all. However, there's going to be winners and losers. And that's why those already out there, like when you look at the Netflix and now you've got other people competing, at some point the market decides and somebody's going to win and lose. In that regards. And I like Game Pass. I personally really enjoy it. And it makes it, from my perspective, when it comes down to recommendations, it's like, well, check this out. For $1, try it, see if you like it, bounce out if you don't. But you can go play Minecraft Dungeons for $1. And if you don't like it and you don't find anything else that you want, you don't have to. And you can still purchase that. Like as long as it's
games I've got from Minecraft or from Game Pass, and I'm a reviewer, I cannot tell you. I would go on the Game Pass and just be like, screw it, I'll download it. And ended up, for example, Farming Simulator. They were on there. And I was like, Farming Simulator, I'll check it out. And all of a sudden I was like, I like Farming Simulator.
I'm gonna own that. I'm gonna own that license. I actually have purchased Minecraft Dungeons over the Switch. Like it's like great. Like it also serves as that method in which that we talk about, that is that mystical unicorn that is no longer the demo. And it's like, hey,
it very much hits on that.
And this comes back to like the whole point for my conclusion. And it's one of the things I truly believe. I always see that the the only review that matters about a game is your personal review.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
that when I look at, like, that's why I like your reviews. Your reviews, I look at it as an education. Like, okay, especially if there's a cost involved. Like, okay, there's a gate and it costs $60 to get over this gate to see the fields and etc. Like, is it worth, peeking over the gate and deciding whether to jump in? And that's where the reviewer comes in. And it's so unfortunate in my mind that we've seen so much drama wrapped around that.
Yeah.
And we talked about that on the podcast and more. So you should totally check it out. Link in the description.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
Carrick, is there any like this? That's what I had for this conversation as a part of this
How
outline.
much time do you got?
Let's see, what time is it? Like, oh no, I think I have a meeting. Let's see here. I have a meeting in 30 at 3:30. So I have until 3:30.
What is that? 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
Yeah. I would say overall, especially when you look at it from a developer standpoint, a gamer standpoint, / consumer, and then a reviewer standpoint, I still think I'm pretty positive about there's a lot of, I think when positivity for me comes from chances, like, do you have a chance of good times, and is your chance higher?
Yeah.
And do you have a chance of making a good game, and is your chance higher? And I think that despite all the other crap that we talk about and that I dislike, one of the reasons why I do the podcast, in fact, is if I don't like, so for example, I may like a game from a company that we don't like. And then on the podcast, I can say, yeah, I like the game, because as a product, that game is fine.
Yeah.
But the company, let's talk about what I don't like about this company, and we can go off there if we want. But I think when you look at it, man, it's pretty cool that there's so much stuff out there. But I am worried about something that, and you say it's not even a review thing, it's more of coverage. And I talked about this in the other one just for a second. I was saying that there was like 2,000 games on Steam in 1 month.
Yeah.
Ooh. What I'm worried about is not the glut. I lived through the glut of Atari, but I was so young, I just barely remember it. I remember Sega and Nintendo returning, basically, from that
Nintendo. Super Mario 2 was the first game I ever played.
Yeah, so I lived through the glut of a lot of crappy Atari releases, but I was so young, I just barely remember. But what I am worried about is, and this is purely selfish, I like to talk about games.
Yeah.
And I'm worried because I'm already noticing this in my own Discord. We have about 2,000 people in the Discord. By the way, come to my Patreon if you get a chance, check it out. I buy every game. I want to make sure. I you know what? I never tempt the patron, ever. I always forget. I do it in my own videos, but I'll go into somebody's and they'll be like, do you have a patron? I'm like, oh, I should mention that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have a patron. And it does help. But we have about 1,000 people in there. And I'll mention a game, man. I'll link the game in a URL. And people will be like, what's this? And I'll be all, what do you mean, what's this? Like, it's the big game this week. And they'll be like, that's not the big game. This is the big. And then somebody else will come in and be like, this is a big game. And I'm not lying. One time, 12 people posted in a row. It was like machine gun. It was like, rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. And we all were laughing so hard. We got into voice chat and we're like, any of you guys know any of 11 other games anyone posted and only one person knew 2 of the other games? That's how many games are coming out.
Yeah.
And I worry. When I grew up, you talked about it. Being in school, somebody mentions Phantasy Star, and you do this thing where you're like, wait, what? Phantasy Star? What? I know Phantasy Star. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
And you're all get together and you're like, oh my God. I worry about the day where I mention a game and most people, unless it's a AAA or has a drama around it, where people just don't know what it is. And I'm already seeing it when I do reviews. And that depresses me because I want those developers to do well. I want them, as long as everything they're doing is above board, I want them to do incredibly well. And it feels a little bit like Amazon friggin' self-purchasing, where you can go and find books about werewolves and vampires making love and all this crazy stuff. And there's so much stuff now that collect piece is gone. It's almost like the storytelling bit of gaming is gone. And that depresses me. That would be the only thing I come out of all this positivity with, is that the one thing that depresses me is that the communication about all these experiences may not be easy to parse anymore. I would change that. It isn't easy to parse anymore.
I would challenge that maybe it's never been easily to parse. We've gotten more complex as adults from children.
But I mean, there's just so many more titles. There's just so many more.
Oh, volume, absolutely.
That's what I'm talking. Yeah, I
absolutely.
To be clear, I am talking about pure volume. I mean, even Microsoft, if they've got 11 IPs, Sony's got 11, Nintendo, which we don't know what they're doing. They're over on the island
just doing their thing.
Doing their thing. And then Stadia, for instance, has their own thing now. And then you mentioned Shadow, even though what we use with Shadow PC and stuff like that, it's a little bit of a different situation.
Mm-hmm.
But the same thing happens with Netflix, dude. I'll be in my Discord and I'll be like, man, I'm watching this show. And people will be like, what's that show?
Yeah.
And it used to be where if I went and talked about Lost, everybody knew, and I miss that. Everybody would talk Lost. Everybody knew what the show was.
I think we'll still see something like that happen, but it's not going to happen as frequently because imagine when there's only 3 shows on television.
Right.
And
now there's 33 on one.
But that I think means that when it does happen, you do get I think you'll still see the Tiger King moments.
It's equality.
It will be less frequent, but it will be so impactful. Like it will be but the thing is, we can't predict the next Pokemon Go. We can't predict the next, Tiger King. It's like this just comes out and it just lights the world on fire. I'm not, but you're right. Like the Netflix model, but yet still some things just come out and they just you're like, holy smokes. And those moments will still happen. And the thing is that we remember those moments, they're like both good and bad. Like they're imprints, like on our day, like our lives throughout our history. For Maddie, it could have been the Pokemon game that we were playing together, and she'll remember that forever, and that will leave a lasting impact. And yes, eventually she'll have fewer new experiences because some things are like, oh, this is just like this other thing I've experienced, and it does it maybe slightly better. But then when you get those leaps, and you're like, I cannot fathom what just happened. It's just like, point. So those will happen, but there'll be bigger gaps. There'll be more things that people are kind of playing, but when it does happen, it will become an event. And that's where, when we talked about the hype and the excitement and the drama, and that's the positive side of all that. When as a community, we all come together, and regardless, it's just the nature of human psychology. Like if everybody's having fun, there'll be some people who are just going to have to hate on it because it's the pot. Oh, that I'm only into indie movies and whatever. Like that's fine. Let's be into indie movies. Who cares? But it's like it's still as things grow, and it's the nature of YouTube. Like you've probably experienced it with your rise. It's like, oh man, I love this guy, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, he's either a sellout or he's too big.
Or he liked this game I didn't like. Or he hated this game. I get more for that. Where people.
Well, it's easier to hate on things than offer a meaningful critique in that regards. But it's and that's the thing. I just want to have I love real conversations around games, and people are
it's amazing.
It's weird though because it's honestly, I'm perfectly fine at the size I am. This is great. I like programming. I don't want to give that up. And I like to make videos, and I like to talk to people about video games, and people keep hitting subscribe, and I thank them for it. But then at the same time, I know there's going to be a saturation point in which people will see me as insincere. And that's something I'm not personally looking forward to, because it's no, if you want don't subscribe. Let's just talk about games. I don't care. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But it's weird because if I was trying to make this a career, it's counterculture to, or antithetical. I can't, like I said, I can't speak. So why don't I get into a somewhat of a hobby where I talk into a mic?
Well, you're still speaking better than 85% of them. So.
Good old Texas boy. Bring out that accent. All right, Carrick, dude, I really appreciate. You've given me a blast, man. A lot of time. I think I'm actually going to be on your podcast this Friday. I think
if you want to be on, it's 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on ACG on Twitch, and it'll go into their VODs. And by the way, iTunes and Spotify will post it there too. So if somebody can't watch it live, they'll be able to still listen to it.
Where can people find you if they've never heard of you and I'm introducing them to you?
Yeah, exactly. So if you go to YouTube, it's Angry Centaur Gaming, but ACG is what it normally comes up at now. And then on Twitch, it's ACG on Twitch, because of course you can't use the same. Half of these are already taken. And then Spotify and iTunes is just ACG. And it's reviews. Angry Centaur Gaming is the Patreon, but just video. I'm going to stick with it. Video game reviews. That's my bread and butter. I love doing it and talking about games. And I do a lot of tech stuff. So if you like, let's say, VR, which we'll talk. We need to set up a podcast, you and I, to talk about VR.
Yeah, we do.
But VR headsets, audio headsets, you and I are both big into that kind of stuff, as well as tech stuff when it comes to like buying TVs. I cover that. I used to sell HDR TVs. So it's like, cover those confusing bits of the game industry.
Oh, the marketing stuff. Like, what does this mean? I don't know.
We're compliant with blah, blah, blah. And you'd be like, that doesn't mean the same thing as doing blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
At all.
Like, oh, great. Perfect. And then all the different versions of HDR. So crazy. Guys, be sure to follow Carrick at all those places. You're also on Twitter, and I'll include links in the description of this video below, so you can guys go give him a follow. Check him out. Let him know what you think about his reviews and more. So do you have any review that you can tease that's coming up pretty soon before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I'm covering Outer Worlds for Switch right now, and then The Last of Us come out. The reviews come out for the 12th on that, so most likely I'll have mine ready for that, if not just a little after.
All right, guys. Be looking forward to that. Hopefully you're looking forward to those games. And for Ginger Prime, my name's Brian. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Love your faces, and I'll see you next time. Take care.
Peace out.
Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. This video is sponsored by me. If you guys like podcast and long-form content, I hope you check out Ginger Gaming Radio. Link will be in the description of this video below. So if you're still watching this video, thank you, and check out the new channel for more content, and hopefully you enjoy. Thank you.